Hello and welcome to this Future Tech virtual roundtable from Foodservice Consultant Society International, FCSI. Today we are focusing on designing commercial kitchens and operating food service spaces in the stadia sector. I'm Michael Jones from Progressive Content, Editorial Director of FCSI's Foodservice Consultant magazine. This roundtable is kindly supported by Welbilt Inc. Many thanks to them, and we'll explore the challenges, the opportunities and the changes in food service operations in sports stadia, arenas and large events venues. I'm delighted to be joined by two leading FCSI professional member consultants and the VP of Sales, Marketing and Product Management at Delfield at Welbilt Inc. So firstly, let me ask each participant to introduce themselves and tell us about their organisation and their area of expertise. Pam, can we start with you first, please?
Sure. I'm Pamela Eaton. I am an FCSI professional. I've been in the consulting industry since the late 90s, so seen a couple ups and downs. I'm with NG Associates. The company's headquartered in San Francisco, but we have remote offices throughout the United States and Canada. We do a lot of employee dining facilities, but we do also branch into, kind of all of the other segments like so many other consulting groups do. We do stadia, convention centers, hotels, schools, and kind of have our fingers in everything. So it's been an exciting group to be with and an exciting industry to be in.
Fantastic. Welcome, Pam. Thank you very much for joining. And Marco, please.
Yes, I'm Marco Amatti. I have a company called MAPA Assessoria. And then I work in food services since 1979. And my company is from 2004. And, I'm kind of, I lead with operations more than. I'm M&S consultant, professional member of FCSI since 2000, for the last 10 years. And passionate for the food service area. And, I think the passion that we can share now. Thank you so much, Pamela. I know your work for your NGA. It's a pleasure to be here with Mike and you. And thank you, Marcy, for your invitation to be here.
Thank you so much, Marco, for those kind words. And Marcy, please.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Marcy Mathews. I'm the VP of Sales, Marketing, and Product Management at Delfield. At Delfield, we absolutely love working with consultants on fabricated solutions and as well as refrigeration. So, obviously those both playing a big part in this segment. So absolutely thrilled to be able to share some of that insight and hear from the others today.
Excellent. Welcome, Marcy. Okay, so to kick things off first then, could I ask if we just kind of go around the virtual roundtable, as it were, to just give us an overview of how Stadia food service, from your perspective, has bounced back, I guess, since the pandemic began in 2020. Let's look at whether or not this period now for the food service project you're working on is a period of growth. Is it still in recovery? Is it retrenchment from from how the sector is kind of performing? Let's find out kind of that sort of test the temperature of Stadia food service. Pam, could we go with you first, please?
We had projects kind of in multiple stages at the beginning of the pandemic. And so we had some smaller ones that finished up because they were not, it was early enough that they could. And then we had another one that slowed down a little bit more, very large one that slowed down some to just kind of make sure that nothing, went too terribly off the rails. And then, others that were in early stages of financing and programming that are still on the sidelines and have not, because of issues that that their areas experienced, have not been able to restart.
Great stuff.
I mean, I think
it's
very much, kind of, I feel like area oriented, where, some parts of the country have responded and others, particularly the reservations, have been just, terribly affected.
Yeah. Interesting kind of mix there. Marco, what's it been like for you, the projects you're working on in this sector?
Yes, what happened now in Brazil, very important. My company is in Brazil and our main market is Brazil. Brazil is changing a lot. We are in another way of US market. First of all, we must think about what is stadia for us. Stadia for us is soccer or football, in England, like in Brazil. And then we have a very different kind of timeline for consumption. And then many companies is study now more options to consume food. As you know, the time frame of baseball or basketball is very different than a soccer game. Mm-hmm. And the main stadium in São Paulo, in Brazil itself, is about soccer fields. And we have World Cup about 6 years ago, and then we have many stadiums that must be rebuilt to do another things. Like in São Paulo, we have an e-arena. It's a stadium for e-games. For me, it's another frontier that I want to talk for further in this meeting. But what happens now in Brazil? Many stadiums is being rebuilt. It's a very kind of opportunity to new operations. But we don't have so much technology now. I think that we must going through another way. So we are in progress. We are rebuilding many stadiums, and it's a kind of hot place to be in the stadium in Brazil.
Excellent. That's a great summation. Thank you very much, Marco. Marcy, how about from your perspective in terms of the clients that you're working with, specifications for stadia? Would you say the sector's in kind of rude health? Is it in a period of recovery? What's your sort of the state of play from your perspective?
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with Pamela that, it really depended on the stage of the process that customers were in. So, we saw small things continue and then really just almost come to a screeching halt. And I would say that, we saw a lot of that really slow down, but now we're seeing things almost bounce back to, I would almost say, normal, where, projects are seeming to move forward. I think there is still some reluctancy on investment side, as inflation has increased, and I think there's still some reluctancy to move forward on some of the really big projects because of where costs are and supply chain is. But I certainly think that we're starting to see a very large recovery and starting to see things be back to very close to normal.
Great, thank you, Marcy. To our consultants then, to Pamela and to Marco. Marcy mentioned there about a very large recovery being on the horizon and coming back towards that. Looking at the future slate of projects that you have lined up or you're currently working towards, would you agree with that? Would you say that the future looks very bright? Are you very optimistic about stadia food service projects coming back to that very large recovery that Marcy mentioned? Pamela, first, please.
I don't know that we've seen a whole lot of aggressive movement on the stadia side yet for projects that, for anything new, and even, like I said, things that were early financing prior to the pandemic. Although Marco mentioned e-games and esports, and that was definitely something we had seen bubbling around right before the pandemic. And so I think that that's a whole topic that, and a whole industry that is probably going to explode. It just, it needs to kind of get its feet back underneath it, because I think that, I'm not really sure how everybody being at home affected e-games, because I am not an e-gamer. So I'm a little bit, that was definitely a learning curve as we were trying to talk through clients with what they actually needed out of a facility. But that does seem to be something that could be huge, and possibly very quickly huge, as soon as people get a little bit more comfortable. And I think Marcy's comment about the supply chain is another big thing, where one of our clients is discussing when, with an opening that's 2 years off, are you placing orders now? Because, are things 40 weeks out? Are they 10 weeks out? Where are they? Where are they going to be in 24 months? And, there's still a lot of questions about the supply chain and how the different variants are affecting supply chains and manufacturing.
Great answer. Thank you, Pamela. So, Marco, are you factoring in things like that, the supply chain aspect that Marcy and Pamela have just discussed? How is it affecting your kind of future slate of projects?
well, affected about until 6-7 months ago. What happened in Brazil, we have a kind of own industry. And of course, we depend of, Taiwan things and, of course, but our size of market is very different from US or Europe. And by the way, many experiences about new challenges for stadium. Like you must think about, not like US or US, we didn't have restaurants inside stadium. We have only a kind of kiosks, very poor, low quality products, and now everybody's improving more quality. Because of the public is wants things better and better things to do. And I see a bright horizon in Brazil for the next 2 or 4 years, not to have new stadium, but to rebuild, to refurbish something, to change the operations inside. Many stadiums in Brazil doesn't have chairs to sit.
Right.
Just yes. So it's very very medieval things that you can see in Brazil sometimes. Yes, but now everything's changing. The public is paying more for see the games, and we have kind of very high recovery of this area. But you must think that this recovery we can feel because we have a deep depression last 3 years. Yes, last 2 or first, and now everything's recovering, and I think I can see a very bright future for stadium in Brazil, and many companies from US is coming to work here. As you know, I was sometimes working with some people from FCSI, like Bill Caruso and Bill Talton, and those guys know so much about project. And my specialty is operations, so we can share many things in stadium things. I think it's a bright result in Brazil.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Marco, that sort of collaborative aspect that you bring up there. You talked about, the interest in a lot of rebuilds and refurbishments at Stadia that you work on. Can you talk a little bit about how you approach Stadia projects differently to how you would other mass catering venues? I don't know, like a hotel, a casino, a B&I project. What is it about how you engage the operator differently, the major stakeholders? How do you approach a Stadia project in a different way to perhaps other food service projects?
You must think about soccer, the soccer time frame. You have some minutes, an hour before the beginning, you have a huge movement, you have many people, then 40 minutes, nothing to do, nobody eats, because it's not easy, and then you have 15 minutes to do everything that people must eat and drink, and then returns, and after the game, nobody stays in the stadium. It's not like US that you have a kind of food court. No, everybody goes to the streets. What's changing? When you think about projects, you must have a kind of like grab and go for some, like something like grab and go, very quickly service, very quickly service. And sometimes there was a stadium here in São Paulo, it's Allianz Park. Now they have restaurants and food court, so people can watch the game inside a very fine restaurant with barbecue and other. There's 4 restaurants, one of Brazilian food, another Japanese food. You can watch the game inside to see the field, and then you have a food court when you leave. It's a kind of new experience, and everybody's seeing there. We must do that. Yeah, because we have the revenue of the stadium itself, the revenue of food, everything that you have, you can do everything inside the stadium. So the perspective of a project, you have more equipment, but not heavy equipment. very easy to lead. And of course, sometimes we have a central production just to distribute some. So it's very inside the stadium. We can see many levels of course, in Brazil, we have levels of the price of your ticket can change wherever you go.
Yeah.
So you have products for lower price tickets, and and of course more expensive things, more quality things for more expensive things. So think about that. The project must be of branding, of everything must be projected, must be taught. You must think about the difference between those operations. And of course, we can change equipment, we can change everything.
Thank you, Marco. Same question to you, really, Pam. How do you approach a stadia project? And do you feel it's a very specialist area of food service, or do the same lessons apply to how you might approach a hotel project or another kind of mass catering venue? Is it a real specialism, would you say, working in this sector?
I think it's actually been a special area, but it's trying to morph into kind of more of the typical areas. It's all about revenue, and how do you fill in the dark days? How do you get revenue on a day when there isn't an event? Because you've got this multi-billion-dollar facility sitting empty. If you're a football stadium, in a U.S. football stadium, there's 16 games plus preseason, and and you've got to fill the other ones in. And so you're looking at the way at how do you expand on that? How do you have adjacent facilities that can be utilized when the main area is not? How do you expand how do you open up parts and pieces? And so how do you become maybe a little bit more like a hotel or a casino, where there is something to draw the public in that doesn't require a ticket, versus here's a ticket, and it's not an inexpensive ticket. And how do you get people to come in and spend money as a kind of as a captive audience, and making sure that they don't eat in the parking lot during the tailgating, because they don't want to buy your $14 hot dog because it's no good. I'll spend $14 on a hot dog, but it better be a good hot dog.
Yeah,
and
right.
It's just a lot of times they're not. And so just trying to figure out how to raise the experience, and also how to expand the revenue options are, I think, the big things that are facing the event venues now.
Great answer. Thank you, Pamela. Marcy, let's get your view on that. Really, I think, great phrase there from Pam, which is raising the experience. How are you and your colleague at Delfield, but how do you feel the industry generally is raising the experience and approaching stadia projects maybe a little differently to how you might have done 5-10 years ago? What's sort of changing, do you think?
And I do have to agree with Pam that I don't know that it's that much different than so many other large type catering facilities where people are just demanding different level of experience almost, where before you might just stand in a big long line and then you'd go up and you get a hot dog or a hamburger, whereas now any stadium that you go to, they're responding to needs of their customers because they want to keep them there. They want them to be generating that revenue for them. So they'll have multiple different kiosks that is expanding cooking from being back in the kitchen, where there might be one common kitchen, but now they have to have multiple sources for heating and refrigeration. And so they're bringing that out to the customer, kind of giving them the illusion of cooking on site, a more, more hands-on touch experience for the customer. And with that also comes the need for more flexible types of products. So as they're responding to those industry trends when it comes to food items, and sometimes even working locally with local restaurants to bring some of that in. You know, how do they have a piece of equipment that is more flexible and does more than one thing? And that has been a focus for us at Delfield, is that we really want to have flexible products. So if it's, you know, if it's a hot well, it also can be a cold well. You know, if it's holding cold products, it can also hold hot, so that as those trends change, the equipment can then naturally adapt with them very quickly and agilely.
Great answer. Thank you, Marcy. Let's look at some of the, we've already mentioned some of the challenges that operators and indeed the consultants and by proxy the manufacturers are facing in this sector. We've talked about supply chain issues. What are the other, some of the other big challenges that this sector is still facing? Clearly there's a labour issue in food service generally, but would you like to talk a little bit about some of the other challenges that you're experiencing? Marcy, let's stay with you first on that, please.
Sure. So of course, you know, we already mentioned labor. Of course, that's a big thing. And, you know, and now you not only have the challenge with just getting people, but it's a short period, you know, it's a lot of times not full-time work. So you have that challenge of, you know, new people continuously starting. So you want to have equipment that's really easy and intuitive to use. You know, that's one thing that as we talk to customers, even about controls, you know, they tell us, just give us simple things that anyone can walk up to them and understand how to use them. So, you know, we also mentioned just inflation. And so I think that, you know, until we start to see that stabilize, that just increasing costs across the board. You know, Pam mentioned the $14 hot dog, and we all kind of smile, but we know that that's where it's at. Yeah. And, you know, if I go with my family and I'm going to go to a game and I'm going to have to drop a couple $100s just to feed them, there's probably a strong likelihood that I might give them some tailgating snacks before we go in. So, you know, I think for them, just finding ways to continuously have that revenue stream throughout their facility is definitely a challenge.
Great stuff, Mark. Thank you very much, Marcy. Marco, same question to you. What challenges are the operator clients that you work with feeding back to you that they're still feeling?
Yes, Marcy was very happy saying about be simple with the equipment. Yes, to train people is very hard. But to get people to work today is very hard in Brazil also, as in the United States, all over the world. And you must have many issues to gamification for new people, to train those guys, very important. We don't have to train as we trained before pandemic. The first challenge is to keep simple the training, to keep simple the people to know how to do things like equipment, food safety. It's not easy because as Pamela mentioned very happily about it's an event, and sometimes the stadium is changing. I must say that stadium Brazil now is changed to have shows, to have, you know, music, those kind of things, and sometimes schools, other things doing inside to have a kind of revenue every day just to visit. You know, it's very different in Brazil than US and other parts of Brazil. You have the stadiums belongs to clubs, belongs to people that they're keen on, like you in England. You have people going to, you know, Old Trafford visiting, things like that, you know. Yep. Then we have Allianz Park visiting. So we have another touristic things to do inside the stadium. But the challenge is to have people. It's huge, but the main thing is how to do those people doing the right thing. We don't know how to do in the old way, training, just asking. That we must have other tools to do that. Yes.
Thank you, Marco. Pam, same question really to you. What are the biggest challenges you feel this sector's still got to face in the long term?
You know, as the sector is trying to figure out the best way to maximize their revenue, what we're seeing is they're trying to get more authentic. And so where there had been an overall operator for the whole facility, now that operator is bringing in smaller local businesses to give, you know, local flavor and to expand the cuisine options in a, you know, not Americanized way, so you're bringing in somebody, offering real ramen or offering, real banh mi, not, not a food service operator's interpretation of it. And that comes, so now all of a sudden you've got potentially separate employee streams and, and faster turnover. And so the agility of the equipment becomes, very paramount, because if this season it's, it is banh mi, but then next season it goes back to being hot dogs. Can the equipment do that? And how do we bring in equipment from, specialized equipment from around the world to, that does these, that doesn't carry the different, NSF or, electric requirements that we see in the US, and how do we get those in, and how do we get those in at a price point that the stadium can afford, that the ownership's willing to pay. So there's so many different, I feel like, directions that everybody's looking at going in at the stadiums, and and it goes back, and then it does always come back to labor. But I think as we expand the revenue streams and we expand the active days, then it can become full-time employment, and that helps keep employees. When you know that you've got a job 365, then versus 6 months, 8 months season. Yeah. That changes things.
Thank you very much, Pam. So we focused there on the challenges. Let's look at the solutions. Marcy, over the last couple of years, how do you feel this sector has adapted and become maybe more innovative as a result of that? And also, what great ideas, great process, great products do you feel has come out of maybe the pandemic and the challenges that brought, and the related challenges it brought with it? What sort of innovation has been accelerated out of the last couple of years, would you say?
So, I think it was always there, but I think that, we've all said it a couple of times, Pamela, Marco, and I, on the need for flexibility. And I think that is now more apparent than ever. Not that it wasn't there before. I just think that it was certainly accelerated, that now, just from an application standpoint, that customers are looking for equipment that does more than one thing, has the ability to adapt, whether that's menu changes, whether that's serving styles. There's a lot of different things that play into that. But, I think that the need and then also the speed to get those types of products to market are certainly something that we have seen. At Delfield, we have really focused on a whole series of flexible products, and it has been just for just these types of customers where they may need to adapt to trends that change, like Pam mentioned, bringing in local and suppliers, and not just the same traditional food service supplier that was working out of a common kitchen. So, really, I know, again, that we've said it multiple times, but I just think that flexible equipment piece has really been the biggest piece for us at Delfield that we've seen.
Great answer. Thank you, Marcy. Marco, same question to you, really. What ideas and what innovation do you think has worked really well for clients that you've worked with in the last couple of years?
Technology, of course, like many companies with ventless, with more flexible equipment. So the solutions inside the equipment is to be simple, to be more simple as it can. But what happens for the next year, for the next years? Thinking about Brazil and maybe South America, you have fine restaurants inside the stadium, and probably like fast food like McDonald's, such things that we don't have inside stadium. It's very important to say. We have only local operators, because we have a kind of strange structure to share those spaces of food space. And now probably we have many other brands doing the solution. Sometimes inside this kind of technologies that is inside those companies, has inside those operations. But thinking about solutions, not only equipment and labor, thinking about it's not our job, but sometimes the management of the space You know, sometimes you don't have all the space of an arena of you must divide things. You must can do more than one thing, more than one event. It can be a solution, and then the flexibility of the equipment and the people must be more profitable for those things. I want to be back to Pamela. He said millions and millions of dollars in the facility. You must have revenue, and of course the challenge is to have more and more events. And we have, and if when you have more events, you have more, you know, lower and more expensive tickets for those people. So flexibility to have a fine menus that you can have. You know, you have Japanese food for I will say our prices in Brazil for $100, and for $10 the same, not the same, almost the same Japanese food. It's Japanese food, just one is only fish, it's only rice because of the food cost.
Yeah.
The same operation you must have many tickets. Okay, that's a solution. You don't have only a product with high prices. You must have our own menu with many different prices.
Thank you, Marco. Pam, both Marco and Marcy have majored quite a lot there on flexibility, the importance of flexible products, and also getting the speed of market for getting those that flexibility in equipment towards operators. What sort of smart ideas, smart thinking have you seen that's been implemented by clients that's really inspired you or made you rethink maybe how you design a kitchen space in this sector?
There's, the flexibility is the big one. They've also looked at different ways to provide it. And so, one of the projects that we've been talking to is, is there a way on, on non-event days to have Uber pickups, have, DoorDash, have all of those people come in, how do you incorporate that somewhere that they can, get into? How do you get that out to people? Do you do deliveries to, to businesses if there's, corporate facilities in the general area, and particularly, and some of them have corporate towers going in, in association with some of these things. So how do you, again, it all comes down to expanding the revenue streams. Where do you reach out to? And there's just some really, creative approaches to, to get, to get the food products out there, and also to get, and then it's also building the brand, oh, hey, I went to, we had our meeting catered by, whatever, and it's open, it's open today, even though there's not a game. Why don't we go, have dinner at this, restaurant or at this outdoor patio? And how do we, all the different ways that it stays open to the public. Every time I turn around, there seems to be something new that somebody's done to, add door here, add seating over there, to try to expand and entice, more customers.
Thank you, Pam. I'd like to focus for a moment, if we can, on the drive towards the electrification of kitchens, particularly in North America. Is a massive trend at the moment, and how that's impacting on stadia. Marcy, did you want to pick that off? Kick that off first. Just how is that impacting how operators are implementing new kitchens, refurbs? What sort of what's the impact there?
Yeah, so on the side of electric kitchens, I think everyone is looking for energy efficiency. We see Energy Star continue to up their requirements and demand more from an energy perspective. And as you talk about moving things out of the traditional kitchen and moving them into kiosks, of course, that becomes a challenge, because you can't just plug anything into a standard wall outlet, a 515 outlet, and think that it's going to work. So, I think that prepared for those changes just as a facility is one thing that we see. And I think that people are just looking to any ways that they can reduce their costs overall. And I think that the big trend towards continuing to have energy efficient equipment it will absolutely continue.
And let's stay with North America. Pam, can you give us your view on that? How electrification of kitchens is impacting on the sector and impacting on clients?
We are definitely seeing, being headquartered in California, we're seeing just a huge amount of electrification. There are areas where it's, flat out, you can't put a gas piece of commercial equipment in. And then we've got other areas that's just obviously on the horizon. And so we are designing facilities that have electrical outlets and electrical supplies and panels and are ready to go all electric when they go for a renovation and have to switch to electric. And a lot of what is driving keeping the gas is a lack of electrical equipment for some of the specialty items, or a concern about employees and training them on how to use things like induction. And and it's not that induction is really that difficult, but it's mentally challenging. It's the whole idea behind induction, I think, that's scary to some people. And until they actually use it, there is a hesitancy to jump to it. I would say more than half of my projects are all electric at this point, and all of the ones that are not all electric are planning for an all electric future.
Wow.
So
thank you, Pam. Marco, do you see that kind of movement in Brazil as well? Do you think it's incoming, if it's not currently there, that move towards electrification?
Yes, especially for fryers. Then you have in front of the house, yes, especially fryers. And induction is a kind of, we don't have the mindset for operators. Everybody uses gas, and gas in Brazil is still cheaper than electric things. Mm-hmm. There's a challenge, but if you see many projects has a kind of electric and gas. Just now we have more electric things, but when you think about cooktops, it's more gas. And also probably next years we will have another kind of, in Brazil we have solar that we to make electricity. Maybe electricity will increase more because the source of our energy is changing very quickly. So probably in 4 or 5 years, electricity will be cheaper than gas. But today it's not the same.
Marco, you mentioned ventless technology earlier. Let's discuss that for a moment. How much of a sort of game changer in Stadia food service specifically has ventless technology been on projects that you work on? Do you feel it's revolutionizing this area of food service? Is it simply an interesting additional aspect to have? How much is it sort of shaping the food service sector in Stadia?
For real, it's revolutionary thing for stadium, and not only stadium, for operations in shopping centers, things like that, that you must have to finish something, especially I said fryers, and another ovens. Of course, ventless ovens is a very efficient to do something, speed ovens and things like that. It's a kind of challenge to us. Today, it's a reality in Brazil, and more operations are using those kind of things. Of course, depends on central production sometimes to suppliers, but it's very well successful to use ventless equipment itself. And sometimes now you have a kind of Brazilian things like you have a ventless gas cookers. No, we have a lot of inventions also, but ventless is very critical to be well successful in stadium and things like that, shopping centers.
Thank you, Marco. Pam, when ventless technology first came onto the scene, it was a lot of the manufacturers and operators would struggle to get some of the regulations through from the fire safety departments and things like that. Do you see that the regulatory scene is changing? Do they understand ventless technology better? Is there a bit of a sea change there?
I think they are starting to become a little bit more comfortable with ventless, and the manufacturers are also getting a little bit better at clearly answering the questions. I think that there was some disconnect in what the manufacturers were trying to say and what the code officials were necessarily hearing. I think we've gotten past that. We still run into, additional forms that have to be filled out to get ventless and questions about it. And there are still some localities that are just not interested in allowing ventless or allowing ventless over a certain size, or, you can only have 2 pieces of ventless equipment within a facility. Kind of a slightly odd requirements that are put in place that it's like, well, that doesn't really, having 3 pieces of ventless equipment in different areas of the kitchen does not increase whether one will or will not fail. So, there's still some, I think there's still some getting used to it. And I think we've also seen a little bit of stepping away from ventless, that we're just figuring out ways to be more efficient with hoods. And so they can be lower CFMs and have a lower footprint on the building HVAC.
Mm-hmm.
And so they may be, better able to be incorporated. Or people are just saying, I don't want to deal with the requirements that go into cleaning the filters or replacing the carbon or all of those things. So I think we're seeing a little bit of a shift as far as how much ventless is being integrated. Yeah. Although I do have to admit, we do a lot more new or major renovations where we're not looking at how do I put cooking in a facility that I just can't put a hood in.
Yeah.
So
let's bring in the manufacturer view there. Marcy, what sort of benefits does a ventless offering bring to the table for operators, and what sort of factors are driving its expansion?
Yeah, so obviously the ability to move to where you need to be versus locked into a firm location is a big thing. It's a premium space under the hood in most cases. And so most operators are looking to reduce food footprint. We talked about moving so much more of the cooking out to the kiosks and around the facility versus being locked to a physical location. So it really just gives you the flexibility to move around as you desire, and quite frankly, bring great food quality as well. So it's not just that you're going to cook in one location and then bring it and hold it in another location. Although there's some great holding technologies out there, and there's some great pieces that will hold food for a really long time. But obviously, just cooking it as customers are ordering it brings food quality as well to that space.
Great answer. Thanks, Marcy. One aspect we haven't talked about is an area that's impacting a lot of other sectors in food service at the moment. That's increased automation, even things like robotics. Do you feel like automation has a bigger role to play in sports arenas and sports stadia food service, Marco?
Yes, we using now kiosks like totems. I don't know the name in English. You use cell phones, everything that we must to especially for point of sales.
Yeah, for payment.
We have many automation, yes, in Brazil. Inside the kitchen, the mentality is changing very slowly to have automation. And in this perspective, thinking about stadium, I said one operation itself, kind of the most modern stadium in São Paulo, in Brazil. Many operations are doing those kind of totems that you go there and you don't have people asking about your things, and it's very, very faster. Yeah. And the lines sometimes of this the lines, thinking about soccer game in Brazil, only 15 minutes. You have sometimes people selling and the totals and huge lines, because sometimes we have to change something to have more efficiency, mm-hmm. to serve people, to produce food, because we have very, very little time to serve people, and of course the operators are losing money if you don't have this kind of investment.
Yeah.
Automation, especially in this kind of thing.
Thank you, Marco. Pam, same question to you. How do you feel automation is impacting on this sector? Is it creating efficiencies?
What we're seeing is more the computers within it. So, you know, being able to hit, I want this item in your combi oven, or you want, you know, that you're cooking this item in your fryer. And so you're hitting a button and it beeps, or it, you know, it stops cooking, it comes up, it does something when it's done, so that if somebody isn't immediately right there, you've not ruined the product. We're not really seeing a whole lot of robotics, you know, other than, you know, you'll have the one coffee robot or the one pizza robot that's like, you know, oh, go watch them distract you while it's taking too long for your order. But I've not seen any of the investment in that beyond a curiosity.
Yeah. Now,
I think we're, you know, I think we could be poised to see a whole lot of it, or I could see people going, I'm much more comfortable paying my employees another $1 or $2 than trying to bring in a robot and everything that comes along with that learning curve and that maintenance. And, you know, I think that I think it's still a curiosity.
Fantastic. Thank you, Pam.
You know, I mean,
go Pam.
As a, you know, there's other segments where we're seeing it more in like hospitals, as far as, you know, patient delivery and things like that, where you've got, you know, a cube moving around with stuff in it. But as far as, you know, making a pizza or making, you know, an Americano, I've not seen it outside of a curiosity thing.
Pam, just to stay with you, Marco was talking there about payment kind of systems and payment technology. There's things like just walk out technology that's being used a lot in stadia, certainly across North America. With stadiums increasingly going sort of cashless, is there a concern about data security issues for fans? Are there potential issues there at all, or do you think it's just the future and the way forward?
Well, it's certainly the future, but there's a huge potential for concern. The payment card industry and the security around it is kind of a little bit of the wild, wild west right now. When you're dealing with other payment options, if you're giving your credit card over a phone, if they're swiping it, you know, into a hard line, there are regulatory agencies that have everything set up, and, you know, there's very specific requirements for how they take a payment, how they transmit the payment, how they hold your information, how much information they store. You know, with the ones that are being done over, you know, Wi-Fi, there's a potential that you know, if you don't have an overall contract within the facility, every vendor that has their own setup with, you know, with Square or with, you know, whoever, with, you know, that there is a point that data could be intercepted, whether it's, you know, informational data for spoofing, whether it can actually, you know, get the card number and create a transaction that is outside of the transaction that was approved. There's a whole lot of regulatory approaches that need to catch up to this new technology. You know, and I think the big operators have, you know, that run the whole, that carry the whole contract are much better at, you build a better mousetrap and they build a better mouse. You know, there is just the constant pressure from people who are trying to hack into the system and finding new ways to get into the system, that it's, you know, it's never going to go away, and it's always going to be a potential for an issue that has to be top of mind to, you know, to the technology and security team.
Yeah, thank you, Pam. Very interesting subject, that. Marcy, I'd like to just go back, if we can, just to the automation aspect we were talking about, certainly in back of house. Could you talk a little bit about connected kitchens and how you feel, as to use Pam's point just there about kind of the technology constantly catching up? Where do you feel kind of connected kitchens have what role do they have to play in stadia food service?
Yeah, so, you know, if we look at just like the labor piece of it, you know, and of course, refrigeration is going to be a huge piece of any food service establishment. So if we just break it down to the labor savings with refrigeration, for instance, if you have a piece of equipment that does have connectivity and it can, you know, do some HACCP recording for you, you don't have someone on site that has to do that task now. You also have the, the ability that if those pieces of refrigeration have any challenges or they go down, you have connectivity that's going to tell you that. Obviously you don't want to have pieces down, but if your unit does go down and it's a connected piece, then you're going to be able to tap into our service network and have a first-time fix much faster than you would if you didn't have that unit connected. So, I think just tying those labor savings to connected kitchens, there's really a big piece there that the equipment can work more for you if you invest in the right pieces of equipment.
Great answer. Thank you, Marcy. A final question for you all, and if we could just again go through all three of you, could you just tell me what do you feel will be the biggest trends or the biggest innovations that are going to hit this sector for the rest of the decade? What's going to really change the game in sports, for fans and for operators alike? Marcy, let's go with you first, please.
Yeah, so I think that we're going to see very specifically in the short term, we're going to see the flexibility, grab and go, items that are outside of the robotics that are going to help operators be more flexible and also save on labor and costs and just drive more revenue. So for me, it's really flexibility, grab and go, and some level of connectivity.
Great stuff. Thank you, Marcy. Marco, same question to you, please.
Well, we are expecting 5G for the next months in Brazil. And of course, when this technology comes, probably we have to change to, AI, IA, things like that, that we can share more information. Of course, when we have a refrigerator today, we must have somebody to see the temperature, to have, a spreadsheet to say it's 5 degrees. Mm-hmm. And of course, with 5G, we have a very, very huge increase of technology in all the process. Yes. So in Brazil, the trend is more technology, less labor, like, the guy with the thermometer saying, oh, it's good, it's not that, okay? For me, it's that. It's our level of technology that we must lead with.
Excellent. Great answer, Marco. Thank you. And Pam, same question to you, please.
I think there's three prongs that that I see the segment going, and it's the variety and authenticity of the offerings are going to continue to expand and and globalize. The efficiency of the equipment, and a little bit to what Marco had said about fryers, that understanding that an electric fryer is going to be 30% more efficient than a gas fryer, that electric combis are more efficient than gas combis, and really starting to understand where the efficiencies of the equipment lie and take full advantage of those efficiencies. And then also the reducing the dark days, increasing the revenue streams. How do we make these big buildings be as, offer as many options and, and entice everybody in as many days of the year as they can?
Excellent, Pam. That's a brilliant answer, and I think a really positive place to conclude upon. So that was a really insightful debate for some three great speakers there. Marco, Pam, and Marcy, huge thanks to you for joining us today. I'd like to thank Welbilt for their continued support. Thank you for watching, and please stay tuned to fcsi.org for future events. Thank you.